Hello and welcome to another Best Junglers episode, this one for patch 13.22. And in this video, we have the big Briar nerfs, we have nerfs to Graves, we have changes to none other than Rammus. There are some more buffs to Brand, as well as changes, of course, to the Gruggers. But will any of this be enough to change the jungle meta? We will go over the best junglers for high and low MMR, as well as overall. But the fusion of your jungling and chosen champion is the most difficult thing to climb, and for that we have Virkayu.gg. I have a free jungle improvement resource, as well as a dedicated program where we have jungle video courses, jungle coaching VOD libraries, weekly free video content seen nowhere else, as well as Q&As and patch note rundowns, as well as a private jungle Discord. And if there's one thing I'm good at, it's converting junglers to gold, to emerald, to diamond, to master plus. If you want to climb faster than anyone you know, jungle diff every game you play, click the link below or head to Virkayu.gg. Hey look, on the S tier page, it's Briar, she's number 1, yay. You know why? Because when you're overkilling and your kit is so damn simple and, you know, there's very little counterplay to certain builds, apparently a 45% bonus AD ratio nerf on her R is not enough, because the R isn't the issue. The R has an issue, but it isn't the issue. The issue is still the rest of the kit. It's still a W1, a W2. It's still that Q, and even of course they nerfed that as well, it still has way too much damage in the kit overall for anyone to actually do much about her when she decides to go frenzy on your ass. The snowball is unnatural. The early power in terms of her fisting and fighting is unnatural. She is way too difficult to kill. The kit just presents a certain frustration point for many people trying to actually go ahead and fight her. Although she has been tapered with these nerfs, there's no way she wasn't. The win rate is still absolutely sublime, best in the game, and if you are not banning this, you're playing it, or at least you're playing Rammus. The lethality atomization was directly hit here, but guess what? It's still damn good. Even though we do recommend the Stridebreaker Black Cleaver kind of tech with your Sterix gauge, that is the best way to play. Lethality still has its mark, you can still assassinate people with it, but remember, if you go in, you die, so you have to be a bit more intelligent about how you engage, considering you did have a huge nerf to that build in this patch. You know what, I'm keeping Graves here because even though that armor true grit nerf is very important for your early clears, your early trading, your early fighting, it doesn't really stop a good Graves from positioning properly and knowing that he does more damage than you do. That he can counter jungle and clear faster than you can, that he can basically do whatever the hell he needs to in terms of jungle meta in order to stay relevant. Remember, when they buffed the jungle pets to scale with those resistances better, his true grit synergized with that. Overall, that just sent him up at the top, and now he's just still, you know, on the top. Until they sort of rectify his raw damage output with how quickly he does everything, the champion is always gonna be very strong, but I do coach a lot of Graves players as well in the private Discord, and you can see how strong they are even despite these nerfs, because a good Graves understands when to pick his moments early. Sure, the burger flipping Graves are gonna have issues earlier on, but you know, if you're a smart Graves player who actually strategically invades and strategically clears, this doesn't really bother you when you do it properly. Next up we have Jarvan, and again, they try to nerf him, they thought, hey, we nerfed him, and then they left him here, and guess what? They didn't really nerf him. That's because he's just playing Earth mode. You need to nerf Gordrank, you need to nerf Stridebreaker, you need to nerf Shojit. These items didn't need buffs in the first place, and yet here we are. But Jarvan's issue, of course, is still that E cooldown, and overall he is still the flavor of the month. Just a well-rounded jungler needed to climb solo queue without thinking too much, and of course if you go in and you have a problem, you can go out again, and then you can go in again and out again, and you see where we're going with this. Following this, we have Nocturne. Once more, the stat-checking Flying Pigeon is enjoying himself a great time this season. Stridebreaker buffs, able to counter Briar in the right situations because she sends a global ultimate, you can react to it, she's blown her load, you have everything up, you've got a spell shield. The one champion that actually doesn't mind facing her too much. He's able to really potently skirmish with most junglers, although you really need to pick your moments in terms of your sequencing, your ganking, your fighting, your counter jungling. Really not a Graves level threat in terms of doing everything well, but he does everything well. Yes, the lethality builds are still a thing you can go, but we don't recommend it because, like Briar, you go in, you don't get a kill, you end up being squashed, except in her case, she is mega sustain. If she ends up surviving the first rotation, you don't. So, you know, understand the itemization needed to thrive on this champion, but overall pretty copy-paste, regular game plan, regular sequencing, regular counter jungling, and regular builds. And of course, regular wins. Next up, we have Kayn, who's enjoying the airy technology. I put it on the gameplay channel to ensure that we had this published, released, and shown to you. Enjoying much faster forms, decent damage, the same as about Electrocute would give you anyway, and First Strike would give you anyway, and the earlier form means you become a champion sooner. Basically maximizes your chosen ganks, chosen skirmishes, while still keeping Kayn in his wheelhouse of, hey, I'm gonna scale, I'm gonna take over games, and there's nothing you can do about it. Blue-red all are enjoying this new airy technology. Just make sure your itemization is on point, or of course, as usual, you will end up in a bit of a bad situation. His win rate is usually down because people pick the wrong form in the wrong situation, or build the wrong items on the wrong form, and it's okay to switch and change, of course, if you know what you're doing, but in general, just try and keep things a little simple with the airy technology, and enjoying maximizing what Shadow Assassin brings and what Rast brings. Ever since the the assassins decided to whine and bitch about the loss of the AD ratio on the jungle pet, and they brought that back. Kha'Zix's win rate has gone back to normal. Very strong in high elo and very strong here as well. The champion has never really been weak as people might think. He's always an eternal presence. He was for the longest time, especially for years before, the best assassin in the game in terms of the AD variety. And he definitely maintains that name. Here, you can see this. Yes, Briar can be played as an assassin, likewise Nocturne, but they are not assassin class, whereas Kha'Zix very much is. Yeah, we've got the Ogura builds and the fighter builds abusing these strong items, which of course you can do as well, but most Kha'Zix players are a little bit too timid to play the champion. You know, there's windows to burst and cancel and take someone out of the game. They don't do it. They're too slow in their clears, they're too slow in their rotations, they're too slow overall. He definitely rewards a quick, decisive playstyle, whatever that means, yes? It just means the decisions you're taking firmly, they're good decisions, and you'll always find a way to get fed and annihilate Sorakas, which is what we're here to do. Following this, it seems that Hecarim mains are starting to itemize correctly, which means his win rate is of course going up. When you do nerf things like Graves and Briar and Jarvan over the patches, they do open up the win rates for other champions that are maybe directly countered by or they have difficulty facing. Even though this doesn't directly apply to Hecarim in a very serious way, Graves obviously being nerfed is always good, and I'm just happy to see that the itemization is just a lot better. I'm not seeing Divine Sunderer as a rush item. Please stop doing that. I'm seeing the Strikebreaker, I'm seeing the Shojin, I'm seeing the Ghostblade. This makes me happy knowing that you guys are itemizing the horse properly. Although I hate the horse, I'm happy that you are having success. And we're obviously all happy that Evelynn is still very strong, except those who don't play Evelynn, because obviously you can destroy her, shit on her, keep her down, but she will invariably get kills in the bottom lane or somewhere, end up snowballing a little bit. But as long as you keep that pressure up, the jungle denial up, you can contain her, but a good Evelynn will understand how to be uncontained and be able to carry games quite easily. Obviously, that's why it's a Smurf-like jungler that you will see a lot on Smurfs. Unlike Lee Sin, who on the A tier page you see everywhere in every single rank, and with the Gore Drinker Shojin build really not as difficult as it used to be. That Gore Drinker heal, honestly, I don't like it. I think it needs to be removed. And of course, it most likely will be when they remove Mythics, but overall, Lee Sin is just a great champion at the moment. If you are skilled on him, you will easily climb. If you're at least decent at him, you can equalize and maybe climb a little bit. If you're bad at him, you can compensate by just pressing the Gore Drinker button. But he is still one of the most difficult junglers in the game to master, to play properly, and that's why he's here and not at the top of the S tier page. But in my opinion, he's in a super sweet spot. Much like Talia, who although does require a lot of setup in solo queue, you know, you kind of get that, and you don't really always need that. But she snowballs so damn heavily. If you get a head on her, people will die. They will be killed. You will get objectives. They can do nothing to you. Your disengage and pick potential is legendary. You can rotate with your smaller rock wall, but still enough to rotate to scenarios like with Briar and Nocturnes. Overall, just a 1v9 carry Smurf champion. Maokai isn't a 1v9 carry Smurf champion, but he can make someone on your team be that person. And then of course you peel, engage, shadow, disengage, and so on with that pretty irritating sapling and overall damage kit. Yeah, he's a tank with a CC bot, but I don't understand why his damage needs to be so high, and I made Maokai many years ago when he was just a pure old-fashioned tank. But now you can do a lot of damage, and as long as you understand your role in the game and don't try and AFK farm 10 CS per minute, you should have no problem basically carrying those games. Fiddlesticks will always be one of the best junglers, let's just state this outright, but sometimes he will go through little blips and dips in terms of win rate and play rate based upon what he's facing that he doesn't like to face. He's always good against things like Kha'Zix's, but obviously can struggle against champions that can interrupt his sucky suck or kick him out of an ultimate that's really juicy. But again, he's so damn unique, he will have no issue thriving. Karthus, better known as Karthus, is one of the best junglers in the game. That game being League of Legends, where he sequences camps quickly, presses R in between cooldowns to stack his first strike, and when he's got a bit of downtime will steal your jungle camps and of course gank your lanes, taking all objectives and beating you 1v1 because he needs exhaust. Sorry, doesn't need exhaust, gets to take exhaust, and then you get exhausted. Yeah, and with all the champions you see on this list, you need an Ivern to protect your Jinx, to protect your Kai'Sa, to protect your win condition. That's what Ivern's here to do. Sequence, have a lot of downtime between his sucking and eating of those camps. Excuse me, not eating, relinquishing, no, saving of those camps. And then you've got your CC, you've got your bushes, you've got your Daisy, and obviously you've got your E-Shield spam. Use it wisely, win games. You know what, I thought about putting Bel'Veth here, but honestly, while she's still very strong in 1v9, I'm liking Shaco's data. Not because he's necessarily better designed jungler or champion for the general climate solo queue, he's just performing better at the moment, and I do like those mind game evil Shaco players who are really finding the angles, finding the damage, and are able to win at the moment. Keep on sowing your chaos. Finally, we have Viego, because again, with the adjustments to the pets in the last couple of patches, he has come back to the fray, but he was always good in high elo. Again, good at absolutely everything. Yes, he can be kind of matchup dependent, but he's not really, you know, he's a great blind pickable, one pickable champion, much like Kayn. Please understand that you don't need your Divine Sunderer, you don't need your Blade of the Ruined King. We've got Kraken, Trinity Force, you've got a Black Cleaver and a Sterax, go with these kinds of items instead. You obviously can just go Triforce and Black Cleaver, but with the need to protect your camps from counter jungling since the original jungle changes 2 patches ago, the new Quiver and the Kraken Slayer allows you to kind of maintain that control a little better. And as we head on over to the low MMR page, we've got the Briar, Nocturne, and of course the buffed Ramus, who is great against both those champions. Really recommend using him in low elo when you're facing these other ones. Jarvan Must, he makes a return again, Ramus good against that, and obviously the Amumu and the Maokai are back on the list. A lot of your other classical low elo junglers are just kind of struggling a bit. Graves is so strong, he's even viral in low elo. I don't always recommend it because he is more of a difficult style champion, but you can use Graves in this arena. Your Dianas also will work, your Echoes can still kind of work, your Fiddlesticks will also work. These are just ones that allow you to really focus on your jungling. Don't need to think too much about your junglers. You are able to play towards win conditions, you are able to play towards whatever jungle strategy you need to win without overcomplicating things with complex mechanics, because when you're focusing on that, your jungling really does suffer. So I recommend using these, get to gold, and then start swapping in more complicated junglers. And finally, that high MMR page is something pretty direct. Very rarely do I organize this by play rate, by ban rate. I take a look at my own games, I take a look at the scouting, and you just see a top 8 performing way better than everything else overall. Obviously, your Karthuses and Kindreds and Rengars and all these other things that are always good in high elo are still performing extremely well. It's just that these ones here are having such a higher presence. The Kha'Zix one really strong. Of course, Briar is also still good in high elo, don't think she's not, but she's definitely something that gets nerfed a lot more because she's obvious, people know how to play around it, they know how to disengage her. She's something that when you remove that much power from the kit, will definitely suffer in a more skilled sort of player environment. And obviously all of these champions do allow them to counter Briar pretty directly in terms of playstyle, even if they're not going, 1v1 fisting and fighting over crabs. But overall, the presence of these 8 junglers is pretty strong at the moment. This will shift and ebb and flow throughout the patch as people find other counters and new builds and new ways to kind of extricate any sort of lead that they can in the highest MMRs. But overall, these are your best junglers to climb with 13.22. And if you want to understand how to become a monster jungler and climb to high elo yourself, click the video in the box in the top right.